Serikali Saidia. Okay, Swinskip, I hear you on that. Abel 254 at 4 says, Kenya needs more leaders and not politicians. Those are the ones who can even deal with the economy. Okay, Abel 254, I hear you. Keep them coming in. You can get me at I am Jeff Motley or K24 TV. Before you focus and zero in on real estate specifically, George, BBI and business, because that's what is top on the agenda right now.
Sure.
How are you seeing this playing out? Because some people might be hesitant to invest right now. They don't know how this referendum goes, if it gets there. What's your assessment of what really should be calming political temperatures, making a conducive environment for business as BBI? Is it doing that?
Yeah, thank you very much. The country, as a country, we also have to be in a country where we are doing business and we have politics, we have churches. All these things have to correlate. That's when we say that we must disagree to agree, because at the end of the day, even politicians are business people. And you find actually a politician has their big farm, big companies. So at the end of the day, we are in this country, all of us, and it's our country. And even before we have political temperatures rising, we also need to remember we don't have any other home. This is our country, and we are all here to stay. So I would like to comment as a corporate leader. I had said that the churches, the church leaders, the corporate leaders, and the politicians and the government at large, they all need to, everybody needs to take their role, active role. We have seen in the past, we have left everything to the government, and as you have read a text, everybody says, Serikali Saidia, Serikali Saidia. But from whatever we have learned in the pandemic, if we can apply what we have learned in that pandemic and now put it into practice, we can realize that we as the people, we are actually much more powerful. And you normally see like political rallies. And when this side is comparing the other one, they take the crowd, who has a bigger crowd, who has a lesser crowd. So you find that the politicians also feed on us, because assume a politician, any politician from any end, they call for a political rally, nobody shows up, because everybody is busy at their own thing.
Do you think that's a solution?
Yeah, actually, if that happens, everybody takes their role. You do your work, take your role. Don't allow to be used to divide the country. Do your work. Let's all work towards. Everybody actually is calling upon everyone so that we can better our country. We have seen that our country has taken, the government has taken, which is us. The government is even us, because they have taken on behalf of us Kenyans. You find that we as a country, we have taken loans up to 9 trillion, and now it will be extended to 12 trillion. And this money, it is us Kenyans. You do the calculation, you see that every Kenyan has a debt of, I saw somewhere 137,000, everyone, including young children. So this is it is our burden. So we need to take it up as our burden. And I call upon all of us to, when we look at it that way, we are going to stop pointing fingers, expecting a solution from this side, expecting a solution from this side. Assume you as a person, you have a debt of 100,000.
How do you pay it?
How do you pay it?
Okay, okay. Let me get Reggie in as we zero in on real estate. And let's talk about the Big Four agenda, Reggie, because in there, we were supposed to be sorting out this affordable housing issue that we've had. Even as they got off the blocks right there was resistance already on the 1.5% housing levy. Was it constitutional? Was it legal? How does it work? How do they move forward on this? What's the status of that? What do you think is practically achievable by 2022? They've said these are just blueprints. Whoever who comes in should take it up from there. But what do you think is achievable by the time the Jubilee party leaves office with regards to affordable housing?
Thanks, Jeff. The Serikali's idea, which is pretty much what they're trying to do with affordable housing, and that's why they're trying to charge you 1.5%. People need to know when the government helps you, the only way they can help you is to tax someone else to come and help you. And that's where there was a resistance, because someone's wondering, I am paying 1.5% for someone else to get a house, which I am not qualified to get myself. So there's always that element that comes into play. But when you look at affordable housing, the question is, what are we trying to cure with affordable housing? We are trying to cure lack of housing in the urban areas. For me, that is what I call treating a symptom and not treating the problem. Why do we have a problem of housing in Nairobi? Is because we have killed the rural economy and created unemployment in the rural areas, and everyone is migrating to the urban areas to try and look for jobs which do not exist. So as they migrate to the urban areas do not have the infrastructure to absorb, or even the jobs to absorb those people who are moving in. So by the time you are doing the Nairobi Expressway and you are saying there's so much traffic, so much congestion, you are again treating a symptom, which is a very expensive way of treating the symptom. Because you are spending billions on building roads, now you want to spend billions on building housing, instead of making sure that devolution actually works. So if you are from Kakamega, you are from Muranga, there should be employment opportunities there. The government should be investing there. The fiscal policy should not be a fiscal policy for Nairobi, but should be a fiscal policy trying to grow the rural economy. But 70% of the people who work in the informal sector are in the rural areas. They are not in Nairobi. They are actually in the rural areas, but they continue migrating to Nairobi because there is some hope that you might get some job in a construction site or somewhere earn a minimum wage or something. So even the next administration that is coming, that's what I was saying, with that policy uncertainty. I do not actually see a new administration coming to continue with the housing element of the Big Four. In terms of agriculture, in terms of universal health care and education and manufacturing, those might continue, but one that I am foreseeing to be dropped by any new administration that will come in is actually the housing element, because then that is misallocation of resources. Why not say, okay, tea is farmed in Muranga or wherever it is farmed? Why not put a factory that processes the tea there? Then move the factory that processes the tea to Nairobi. If you get timber from Western, why is it cut raw and processed in Nairobi? Why is the factory that processes that timber not actually put in Kisumu or in that same Western region? That way you create industries and develop your manufacturing arm from the source. But when you start trying to do industrialization in Nairobi, and you are building all the factories in Nairobi, all the manufacturing in Nairobi, one thing we need to understand by industrialization does not absorb labor. Yeah? Industrialization is actually labor inefficient. Yeah? It is productive and output efficient because you're using machines and all, so you most probably create 100, 200 jobs. But as a government, they need to understand we are a labor-intensive economy, and we need to improve the coverage of our labor and absorption of our young people that are coming up, but absorb them where they are, than them having to come to Nairobi or to Mombasa. That way now you're starting to see pressure on housing prices, pressure on rental income because there's demand is outstripping supply, and now the government is coming with a solution, let's build affordable houses. No. The government is actually supposed to be saying, how do we stop or how do we slow down the rural to urban migration as a solution? Okay. So truth be said, I don't think they'll be able to do much on affordable housing by December 2021. They will not have built many of them because the cost is so high, and right now revenues for the government are just not adding up.
Bonke, this is right in your alley. I mean, housing is the issue that you and George deal with on a day-to-day. With the Big Four agenda, I'm sure very optimistic when the president said this is what you want to do. How do you think this story ends in terms of affordable housing?
Well, the Big Four agenda, housing was one of the priorities of the president. But you see, the relationship between the president and his deputy has
can we put the blame on the deputy for...
Not the blame. I'm not putting the blame on the deputy, but the relationship of the president and his deputy has made some of the projects collapsed. Because the DP is blaming some other people, the president is also blaming some other people in his government. But I know the president is in charge of this country. He has good advisors who can advise him on exactly what he's supposed to do. But housing is a very serious thing, because real estate is the backbone of the economy of our country. When we are analyzing the situation of our housing in this country, you look at the semi-middle class, the middle class, and upper middle class. Now, semi-middle class is this Kenyan who is paying rent of 10,000 shillings. And when you are paying rent of 10,000 shillings somewhere in Donholm, this person is aspiring to own a plot somewhere in the middle of Kisaju, like 50 by 100. Now, how is this person getting his money to invest on a 50 by 100 going for 400,000 Kenyan shillings? He might be a business person or an employed Kenyan earning less than 100,000. Now, we cannot discuss real estate without touching the financial institutions. Our banks should come out and help investors, especially young Kenyans who are aspiring to own properties as far as the investment is concerned. Because banks cannot be quiet, and they're the ones who are oppressing the investors. Because you can have a prime land and you don't have finance to invest on it. So you become disparate with a property, then a financier comes with his own terms, and at the end of the day, you lose on your own farm. So the government should come out very clear and also regulate the financial institutions. That's now the banks. Because right now I can tell you, banks are now reclaiming a lot of properties. The rate of defaulters, those who are paying mortgages, majority of Kenyans lost their jobs. So some, I can't afford to pay this mortgage because even the rental income of that particular unit cannot service your loan. So you end up losing your properties. So banks should also be very slow when it comes to the matter of, reclaiming the properties. Because if a professional loses a job and now they're coming to you that, you know what, I've lost my job, I don't have a job at the moment, I'm servicing this loan, paying 80,000 or 150,000 every month. How can you give me some grace period so that I can pick up again? But they're not patient. There was a time around mid last year, I was reading newspapers, but if you look at the real estate column, auctioneers were the ones advertising housing. It's a big threat to the economy. The government should come out very clear and protect local investors, and that's why I was attacking the Chinese. I can assure you, Jeff, I'm into real estate. You move to any Chinese project, all of them are Chinese, all professionals are Chinese, they have all the machines, they don't employ Kenyans. And real estate is a very big institution. We have architects, we have project managers, we have engineers, distributors, suppliers, interior designers, interior decorators. So if we can really, the president and the government and the Ministry of Infrastructure can come in and they restructure the real estate sector, this sector can employ Kenyans. Okay. So if BBI, now coming to the BBI issue, if the BBI can also consider, how banks are loaning Kenyans, and they can regulate through KRA and also, the banking sector, so that if I want to buy an apartment, in Thika, and this apartment is going for 3 million Kenya shillings, you can use anything as security, be it your job, be it your employment, your job, be it your salary, or the business you are doing, and you can service and you can secure a unit. Because each and every Kenyan, you will not wish your children to suffer the same way maybe some of us suffered.
Okay, George, let me get you in on this as well, because even as you look at that particular issue Bonke has raised in terms of auctioneers coming and taking properties, banks seizing properties because of defaults on loans and mortgage payments, there was a presidential directive to banks to give a grace period, especially when Corona had hit the country. Did you feel that relief in terms of those who are working, who you are working with, who are your customers as well? How did that play out?
Yeah. Sure, the relief that the government had given during the pandemic, that included relief to pay, increase the period of paying the loans and such, and even the VAT, the pay, all those reliefs. Actually, they were very good, and I actually want to commend the government because they played a key role, because people are very hard pressed, and it was such a good relief. And now that we are moving on, it's also good, as I had said, that we now start looking at these things as we, not pointing fingers to certain people. And my friend there has said that when you do one thing, somebody somewhere else is affected. For example, you want to do affordable housing, you have to tax like the 1.5% that was to be taxed to people who are employed, but they are not benefiting. So every action has a reaction.
Right.
And so with that, we have seen the government has borrowed. Our government has borrowed, which is money we are going to pay. And now what I can actually encourage the government moving forward, and what we have learned, we need to take charge, all of us. And you'll be very surprised when you go outside there to other countries. You find they have a lot of money. For us as Kenyans and as Africans, we have a lot of labor, which is affordable labor. We have a lot of land, but we do not have the money. You go to other countries, you see they have a lot of money, but they don't have labor. That's why you find like a Kenyan who goes outside the country. Maybe he's a doctor, he does something else. He's paid very handsomely because they don't have and people, we have young people. So if we can take advantage, and because now we have seen like the diasporians, people who are in the diaspora, they want to come back home because actually when you're in the outside country, east or west, home is best. And you remember previously we used to say those people with the dual citizenship, it's like they are traitors, you remember. But now we have seen these are also our Kenyans, and they are helping us by giving us remittances and such. So what I can encourage the government is also now to encourage especially the corporate world, the corporate leaders. They need to sit down now with the government. Like for example, I learned that even as a company or even as an individual or as a group of people, you can be given a consortium loan from outside. And those loans are so many. They are actually looking for people. So if the government can open that window, whereby they assist, and even the banks, because banks are also companies, they are assisted and they get those consortium loans. Consortium loans, you are given a loan of, they actually give from 1 billion, you are given 1 billion, and you are given 3-year grace period before you start paying, and you pay back at only an interest of 3.5 to 5%, which is as you compare to the Kenyan interest, which is 14%, is such a good deal. So the government itself has borrowed so much, but we still need money. So what the government can do is now empower the corporate world so that we can also get these loans and we build the economy, and with that everybody will be in a position to pay back his and her loan. And also they also avoid polarizing the country with so much politics.
Okay. Interestingly, this week we also had a story concerning real estate. It was covered in the Business Daily. Is it possible to have that up on screen as well? Okay, as that's queued up, we'll be talking about that because clearly there has been a situation in terms of rising of prices in terms of real estate, and pretty interesting scenario right there. But even as we come to the tail end of the show, I want us to talk solutions on this. We have that. Let's have it up on screen. Muthaiga Don Home top Nairobi land price gains. And this is an interesting scenario when you look at this, gentlemen, because we're coming off, a pandemic year, 2020, and most people would have thought most prices for things across markets would be subdued. Reggie, again, I'll come to you. You're the man with the numbers. Why are we experiencing a gain in price in terms of land? Who's buying that now?
There's the element of what we call pent-up demand. I was already looking at a land deal from 2019. COVID has come. It will not stop me from continuing with the land deal. But the number you'll want to look at more is one, the rental yield and the selling prices of the property and also of land. So if you look at the selling prices of property, overall, all properties, whether it's rental, detached, semi-detached, and stuff like that, we're actually down last year by negative 0.2%, and that's on sales. The rental yields increased slightly by 5.5%. Over a period from 2011 to now, overall all property selling prices have increased by 1.48 times, so like 148%. The question then an investor would ask yourself, is property the only investment that is available? So if the selling price of a property, on average of all properties, increased by 148% in a period of 10 years, if I had bought a government of Kenya bond paying me 12% or 15%, I would have made a return of 150% in the same duration with no stress and tax-free. So I think as Kenyans are also starting to learn that property is not the only way to create wealth, and personally, in my opinion, it is not a way of creating wealth. Property is an investment that you hedge against other investments that you have. What do I mean by hedging? One property is supposed to give you a return that covers at least inflation. If you look at the 5.5% of 2020, where rental yields only went up by 5.5% and average inflation was around 4%, 5%, that means you actually made 0.5% on a rental yield on a property you were holding. That means property is not playing the role of a hedge. So as long as government indebtedness remains and interest rates continue going up, and Kenyans become enlightened that owning a piece of land is not a sign of wealth, or owning a house is not a sign of wealth, there are actually other ways of creating wealth without the stress of holding property or managing property. You realize as long as our interest rate environment remains high, you always have a safer alternative which is not volatile in investing in either government securities or fixed income securities without going for the 7% yield, 8% yield that you get from a property investment. Okay. So when you look at that growth, you need to look at what is the value I get from the property. So the selling price of the land is not really a key metric. It's actually the yield that you get. Once you buy the land, the cost of financing it, the cost of running it, what do I end up as with income at the end of the day? You realize property is actually not as attractive as most people want to make it look like.
I want us to bring this conversation to a close. We have 3 minutes before we wind this up, but I want us to bring it to a close, talking solutions. We've seen where we stand right now. We've seen the potential pitfalls as we move forward politically and otherwise. But in terms of the real estate sector, Bonke, I'll start with you. What could be put in place to make sure that this year turns out to be better? Very briefly from where you stand, real estate-wise.
Well, in real estate, one, the banks must come in and help defaulters because 2020 was a very bad year. And two, landlords must also be in the same page with their tenants so that they can have some mutual understanding. Because even if you chase somebody out of your house, yes, the demand is high, but I've seen some houses, the rental income was depreciating. Mm-hmm. I would disagree with my brother. The only investment you can count on, Jeff, after working here for years at this media station, is to invest in a property. If you buy a land in your village today, after 10 years when your son wants to resell that land, it will be something else. But you cannot compare it with the same car you bought today. But I would advise Kenyans, if you have the capacity to invest, the only investment you can count on is a house or a land. And you can invest somewhere you can afford. Okay. So if you're planning to invest, this is the right time, because there are some houses, like right now, some of the apartments or some of the lands, they've depreciated because of the pressure. So if you have money, this is the right time for you to invest. And lastly, I will still call upon the government to come in hand, to work with local investors, local developers, local real estate consultants, so that we can upgrade the life of Kenyans. If you look at the lifestyle people are living in slums areas, I mean, it is below human standard. So the government, through the Big Four, they should come up with a master plan and reconceptualize, you see, these funny houses we have in our slums, so that people can afford fresh water, they can afford power in their houses, they can afford, a conducive environment. Okay. Yes.
Okay. George, very quickly on you. Solutions, what are your big two solutions that you'd give as we move forward for the real estate sector?
Sure. Thank you. As we move on, I would like to say that in real estate and affordable housing and generally the Big Four agenda were some of the very well thought ideas that the Jubilee government came up with. And I'm almost 100% that they borrowed a leaf from the blueprint that we have, that is Vision 2030. And when I look at Vision 2030, the people who are mostly sitting at the table, I remember there was Mr. James Mongi, Equity, they were corporate leaders.
Right.
And the blueprint that they came up with actually is something that if we adopt, it can help us to move on as a country. Okay. And that's why I'm calling upon the corporate leaders, the churches, and everybody. We come on board and we move the country to the right direction, because everybody who is given a position, be it a pastor, be it anybody who has a leading position, you are a CEO like myself, it is God who has given you that role, and it's only good those people that you are leading, you lead them in the right direction.
Okay. Reggie, 30 seconds as we close this one. Solutions, 30 seconds. What should we do as a country with regards to real estate for this particular topic as we close?
I think if I was a real estate firm, I would have a long-term view and move my operations more into the counties, because at some point devolution is going to work. When devolution works, the rural to urban migration will slow down, and this artificial demand that you have on houses, which has been pushing prices of property and land, will drastically drop. So if you're a real estate firm, establish yourself in the counties now, early, when land is still cheap there. Buy your pieces of land and start constructing places for people to live, or even businesses to operate, as you hope and pray that devolution starts working sooner or later, because that is what is going to actually happen. And just as a parting shot, if you look at the top 50 richest people in the world, none of them made their money from investing in real estate.
Okay, Reginald Kazutu, economist, thank you so much for your time this morning. Also in studio, joined by Bonke Moi. Thank you so much for your time this morning as well. George Boro, thank you so much for your time and for weighing in on this significant topic of housing and real estate and how we move forward even as we get into 2021 proper. That's why we draw the curtains as far as the newspaper review is concerned. We'll take a short break. When we're back on the other side, we get interactive right here on K24 this morning. Don't go too far.